Welcome to your first 60 Days podcast. We are cracking open the code for better executive onboarding. And through a series of conversations, we're really trying to unpack the key things that you can do differently when you're getting ready for this next role. Today, I am joined by Malcolm Armstrong, and we're talking about his learnings over a 30-year leadership career. This is a fantastic, value-packed conversation. I hope you enjoy. Malcolm, good morning. Thank you so much for creating the space in what I know is a very busy diary. It's really good to have you here.
Great to be here, Tess. Thanks for the invitation.
So, of course, you know the territory of the conversation is all about onboarding senior leaders into organizations, and across a lengthy career, loads of wisdom sitting in your camp, I know, and I want to try and draw some of those golden nuggets out. But I'd like to start with your own experience as a senior leader. With the benefit of hindsight, as you look back over time, what would be the few things that you say you've done really well, having learned what you've learned? And then maybe, because it's still really helpful for people to hear it, what have you learned doesn't work so well, and you would offer that as good advice and wisdom to those listening?
Sure, yeah, and I've had plenty of experiences of onboarding, and it's interesting because when you reflect back to earlier career with what I know now, it does have those moments of sort of shudder when you think, did I really do that? So I think, coming back to what works well, we will start there. I've taken over from roles where you've had very competent and capable individuals preceding me. And therefore, if you work on the assumption that the person before you has actually done a really good job, how do you then understand in their context what's really worked? And then what are the opportunities and the platform that you can then step from in the context of the time I'm in a role?
Yeah.
And I think it's really helped me to think through, businesses continue, roles will forever change, and thinking in sort of the time that I'm in a role as the custodian of that role or the player within a role, how do I take the business forward in that? So really sort of step one is honestly coming in with a mindset of curiosity, generally through, for me, a lot of it through conversation, through very simple, but 7, 8 kind of standard questions, casting the net wide with individuals who will interface with that role in the context of the part of the business, and just get their perspective, what's really working, what's not working.
Yes.
What needs to be different moving forward, what contextual changes would be, but also what would be some of the sort of functional shifts or some of the needs from that role are required today that maybe the predecessor wasn't able to give. You've also got your traditional strategy documents or other reading material too. But I think it's really through the power of human conversation, I think, is where you get richest insights, and making sure that really casting the net wide up into the organization, peer level, and then very importantly down into the organization too.
Love that. What kinds of things are you inquiring about?
It'd be a mixture of both, forward looking, as well as looking in the rear view mirror of what got us here. So questions such as, over the next 3 to 4 years, what will be the critical deliverables or things that you need this role or this team? What's really worked in the role today? If they had a opportunity, what would be the 1 or 2 things that they would request to be done differently? And likewise, with that future back lens of what would be the critical things in the next 3 to 4 years that need to be delivered. I would also then take it down into the people part. Most of my career or latter career has been in the area of human resources. Yeah. And starting with my own team, what's working on the capability side, who are the standout leaders, who are the future stars coming through from their perspectives. And again, it's not about being right or wrong, it's just about just gathering information. And then likewise, looking at that through the broader lens of, what's working from a talent agenda, what's working from an organization agenda. What
would be the top tips in terms of how you settle in to a team that you haven't necessarily recruited?
Well, again, I always start with the premise, which is also a very deeply held value for me. The majority of people in roles, they want to come in on a daily basis and do their very best. So I think meeting the team, and by definition a team are individuals, just meeting them where they are at that point in time, always try and carve out face-to-face time. I think from a human perspective, that is when you get true emotional connections.
Okay.
And then just seeking from them, what are they proud of? What have they delivered, or what's the team delivered in the last period of time? What's really worked? What hasn't worked? So we're very much focusing on the business or the team objectives first, and then getting into meeting them as individuals in terms of, again, from a career perspective, where are they on their career journey? And just really in the first stage, just trying to, again, get that human to human connection at the emotional level.
So let's segue across to the things that haven't worked with the benefit of hindsight. What comes under that category for you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest shifts I would say is really looking at earlier career, often coming into roles with a mindset of judgment, in the sense of I'm here to save, or I'm here to radically change, or I'm here to make, and
on a mission.
On a mission. Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. I'm here on a mission, and not taking the time to firstly just acknowledge again what's been done today, because there's always good things that have been done. Not asking curious questions, moving straight into or very quickly into action without really understanding the context. So not understanding the bigger picture. And I think often when you move into a role, it's managing that tension of, well, you've just been hired, the expectation of, well, I need to move into action, and it's a false premise. Actually, usually for me, the only person that was forcing me to move into action was myself.
Yes.
Nobody else was expecting me to do that. And probably a bit of ego in there too, and actually in reality, probably driven off insecurity of I need to prove myself, versus thinking I've been hired into this role for a reason. The whole reason for being here is to, again, take this forward, but take it forward in a way that you take the team with you, and ultimately you're adding value for the business. It's not about me or the I, it's about the we as a team and about it as a business. So just making sure getting that right.
Yeah, I love that. How do you help other leaders not fall into that trap?
3 or 4, I think, crucial things. I mean, I think firstly, if I am the hiring manager directly, or in my role often as coaching the hiring manager, to make sure that they're setting clear expectations from day one. The expectation is actually to take some space and some time to explore and connect and understand where the business, where that particular team is at. Coming back to, if the unconscious need often is I need to deliver value, if your line manager or I am the leader saying to my team, my expectation is that you're actually not going to be doing anything in the first 2 to 3 months, you're almost setting the expectation, well, actually, if I don't take time to explore, I'm actually not doing what is expected. If it's an internal move, often easier, but for somebody external coming in, it's just making sure, again, we're teeing up who are the right connections to have. So just helping that individual map, senior stakeholders, peer level, direct reports are lower into the organization, and then, who else in the kind of broader system, like a key stakeholder map, but stakeholder being all levels. And then, providing guidance around the connections and just making those introductions where that's needed. And then I think the third thing is just really helping, getting through this partnership is, do we have the right, the questions set up, the right sort of structure, and using just as an informal check-in, how do I then partner with that individual in terms of sense making? Sometimes we also set individuals up at, at more senior levels with an external partner, purely to provide an even safer space to do the inevitable sense making. I've heard this, what could that mean? And a thought partnership.
I'd love to explore a little bit more is, first of all, when they are coming off the back of a really successful predecessor, how do you help that particular senior leader hold back on some of the elements that you said earlier?
Well, there's one very simple framework we'd use in both scenarios, which is the 3H model. Honoring the past, being honest about the present as in today, and then really providing that hope and vision for the future. So if you use that as the framework, the framework applies across all situations. For an individual coming into a successful role, in one sense, easier in the context of there is often less pressure to come in and immediately make a mark. It can be harder, however, for the individual coming in to actually then start to go, where do I make a mark? And almost that sense of anxiousness around, where do I make a difference? In that context, usually the business is running well, usually you got a good team around, and it's just really trying to provide more rigorous structure around, look, you've got time, you've got space, use it wisely. And then I think the line management role there, and then the HR business partner role, is to then be sort of very much clear on the future back orientation. Strategically, where do we need the business to be tomorrow, as in the next 4 to 5 years? So you're also providing a really good framing for that, for the individual, the incoming leader, to sort of anchor on as he or she does their exploration around that 3H model.
Well, let's see what nuances are arriving when there's been a vacant seat for a while, because that can be a very different seat to occupy.
I often think that's a more challenging scenario, because this cost of temptation for the individual is, and reality for the individual is, have to often come in quickly to get the business either stabilized or to get things even back on an even keel. So the same model applies with more time pressure, I think, on the individual to, again, often plays to their strengths of, most people most leaders quite good at leaning in quickly to make judgments. So then being more of a thought partner with, actually, yes, we need to do that. But then likewise, where are those things that you really do need to act, but where are those areas that actually you do have more time or space than you may think?
To distinguish those.
So it's really trying to help distinguish. And then I think, again, the role of the line manager or the leader above at that point in time, again, is to sort of, provide some what I would call air cover, in terms of where possible, protect that new leader's time, or managing expectations of senior level stakeholders above that. But we just need to give this individual the next 4 weeks or the next 8 weeks to get under the hood here, set them up for success. And of course, in all of that, just also have a very open dialogue with the new leader around expectations, because again, line manager or the reporting hierarchy ultimately is the mechanism above all else that sets expectations as to what success or failure looks like. Of course.
One of the areas that I noticed that doesn't have the attention, in my view, that it deserves, and I would even go as far as saying it's a bit of a blind spot in some organizations, is how to deal with the endings as part of setting up the new beginnings. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant question, Tess. And if I start with the I first, I completely underestimated. In fact, I was completely ignorant of the whole endings matter. And beginnings are really important too, but often we focus on the beginnings, but we often completely forget about the endings. And I think both from a team perspective, but actually from a broader business, the transition point, so your point, the ending of a leadership role is a crucially important moment in time, because I think it's actually that moment that many employees or associates will look at, and they will form judgments, and they will actually, from an emotional perspective, those will be the moments that they feel that they're either part of this broader system and they want to be part of this broader system because they observe, again, it's that honoring the past, respect for the past, or not. And I think unconsciously then a lot of people will put themselves into that situation, kind of go, well, the old saying, as above, so below. Well, if that's how this business, if the business espouses that we treat people really well, and you don't acknowledge in that period of time.
That's a magnifying glass.
That's a magnifying glass, and it's a data point, and it's actually all the things that we can say and all of things that come out of business communications that is discarded pretty quickly. The real moments are, I think, for people, particularly in larger organizations, to look at. They go, what happens at the top? They observe.
They draw meaning out of that.
They'll draw meaning out of that, and to themselves too. So I think for me now coming in, and I've been very fortunate, by the way, in terms of the last 2 roles I've come into, I've had outbound leaders who've been incredibly gracious, also with the same philosophy of, in their time, they've moved the ball or the puck from this part of the court to the next. And really sort of almost like symbolically, it's like in a relay race, you're handing the baton across and making sure visibly that transition too. So things that for me have really worked, and it's not always possible, but wherever possible, the outgoing leader with the incoming leader. So for myself, if I'm incoming, acknowledging, the past, acknowledging what that previous leader has done in a very authentic, very open, very public way, often in a town hall type scenario. What I've also found over time is, of course, for the leader stepping out, they love it because they're actually being appreciated. They get acknowledgement for what they've done. And in most cases, that is possible. And it's a small thing, but I actually think for teams below, it plays well above its weight.
And the additional spotlight I would add in as a build is in that acknowledging the leader leading, you're also by default acknowledging all the work of the team that contributed to what was achieved. So they feel seen as well as noticing what we do around a shift in leadership. So there's so many layers that are in the spotlight simultaneously.
And that's probably the most profound thing of all. For individuals who've worked usually tirelessly underneath a leader, as you said, it's really acknowledgement or not. And again, you build that goodwill, which is gold in today's world. Of individuals go, that respectful ending, respectful start. The relay race, I think, is a really good way of thinking about it. That. The 100 meter or 400 meter race. And then the team goes, great, farewell to the previous leader, welcome a new leader, and off we go again. And I think also, there's also another simple model I use in terms of, it's a very simple triangle. There's one tip of the triangle is intellectual. So the strategy, the hard outcomes, what we do, which we always focus on. I always focus on. But what I've learned, the other two parts of the triangle are critically important, is the behavioral part. So what are the behaviors that I will exhibit? Respect for others, how I would just show up in this type of forum. And the most important part of all, which is the one that we always seem to neglect in business, is the emotional part. How are people really feeling? What are the hidden things, either said, not said? But, the emotion bit of I want to either give more or actually I want to withdraw and just give the minimum. And I think these handover points are incredible opportunities for that emotional and behavioral part to really amplify. And that's where I think a lot of discretionary effort comes from in the business.
That really resonates. Thank you for sharing that. So as you look over your career from all the seats that you've sat in, and I know you've had seats globally, in lots of different settings. So there's so much wisdom I want to draw from you. Is there any nuances that you would add in depending on either geography or the scale or the scope?
Top line thoughts. So moving across cultures, I would say my default position, the I part, I always used to think we were way more different than we were similar. And my experiences were way more similar than we are different. And at the same time, taking time to understand the cultural nuances that are important in that new culture that you move to, critically important. Now, the obvious ones are if you're moving from, say, like a Western culture, like say Australia or US, to something like Japan, for example. It's very pronounced, and actually you often therefore focus on it. So, again, it's just taking time to understand, actually, cultures have their own nuances. If you figure those out and you understand how that works, it can be incredibly powerful. If you don't, it can be unintentionally quite grating or demotivating for teams or businesses that you're landing into.
What about time in different countries if you're in a global role? So for those listening who might be going from a national role to a global role, how quickly do you think people need to get out and visit the different countries to do because of course we do a lot virtually these days, but how important is it to be physically present in the different spaces in your view?
So I think critically important in the context of my experiences. Once you've established those relationships and once people have experienced you human to human, and that can be individual one-on-ones, team conversations, town halls. But once they've experienced you, you can then do a lot virtually.
Okay, so you front load human time.
I think for all of these global roles, you have to front load, that getting out and about. Nothing supplements that. So the first 6 months, 9 months can be pretty heavy travel. My personal learning is very hard to establish presence virtually without having that physical presence up front.
If you were having a new leader in front of you today, what would be the few absolute top tips?
So honoring the past in the first 4, 8, 12 weeks is critical, because once that window's closed, it's closed forever. You can never go back and do that. Honoring the past, by definition, requires you to be curious. Second one linked to that then is the curiosity, the questions. And then thirdly is you must have a really good representative, cross-section of the business, from your most very senior stakeholders through to your, again, if you're running a business, your most junior levels. Spend time in a factory, get out with the sales team. You'll touch a relatively small group of the population. Everybody in those areas will know that you've spent time. And because what you also I think often underestimate is, I call it the bush telegraph. People know, if you're working in the factory, people know if a new general manager has spent time in the factory. They don't have to experience it themselves, but they just need to know. The news travels very, very fast, particularly as you go down into the organization. Final point would be preserving time. And, you know, at very senior levels, we'll often put an external partnership in place because, again, that's often a good sense-making safe space where, again, I'm not going to be judged by my new leadership team that I'm part of.
Yeah.
I've got a safe space
Right.
I can, again, make sense of and ultimately distill everything I learned down into what are the series of choices that I'm then going to take forward and put certainly my initial sort of anchor points around.
Malcolm, thank you so much. That's been very rich and in lots of really healthy and helpful ways. Deeply appreciate your time and your energy and the care that you've taken to arrive with your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tess.